Salut, bonjour, and welcome to francofille, a creative podcast. My name is Devin, and this is where I sometimes document my knitting and other fiber-related crafting. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry at @BeDevin. You can also find my Etsy shop if you search francofille, and at francofille is also the Instagram for my Etsy shop. It's where I sell my hand-dyed yarn and some of my knitting patterns. The rest of them, actually all of my knitting patterns, can be found on Ravelry. You can email me and all that kind of stuff as well. All that information is down in the little info box below, and I think that's all the really pertinent information. It is currently the week between Christmas and New Year's. I actually had recorded an episode probably 2 weeks ago now, and then with everything that's been going on, including getting ready for the holidays, I never got around to actually editing and posting the podcast, that episode. So I'm actually going to be pulling a couple little bits out from that one, including most of the shop update stuff. Really not a ton has changed other than maybe some of the quantities, and talking about one of my finished objects because that is now in its new home. It got gifted. I have 2 finished objects to show you, 3 whips that I'm working on that are gift knits. Also go over my crocheted scrap yarn blanket, and then I got a couple knitting related Christmas presents that I wanted to show you guys. No yarn, but a couple books that I wanted to share that I'm really excited about. So sit back, relax, grab some tea. If you can see, I've got my my teapot and its little tea warmer. I'm so excited about. The warmer was a gift from my sister-in-law and her husband, and for our wedding a couple years ago, they actually got us the teapot and then a matching creamer and sugar bowl set. So like all of my favorite tea things, they're all from my sister-in-law and her husband. So I'm enjoying that today, along with some tea that my mother-in-law got me for Christmas. Some really, really yummy sugar maple tea that apparently is a Canadian tea company that the family of one of her friends from book club owns. So kind of really a special tea there too. So yeah, I'm really excited. And let's just go ahead and dive right in. The first finished object I wanted to show you is the only bit of selfish knitting I've actually finished all month, I think. Most of December has really been focused on gift knitting, as I gave a lot of hand knit gifts this year for Christmas, including a couple that aren't quite finished, and I'll show you in a second. We're not doing Christmas with my family until New Year's, so I've got a couple more days yet. Hopefully I'll get them finished. But anyway, I did finish up a pair of Christmas socks for myself. This is my Christmas at the Cabin colorway, and I did a sock kit that was available in the shop. It's all sold out now, but it came with 100 grams of this colorway and then a 20-gram mini skein of holly. This is the red, for contrasting cuff, heel, and toes. I wasn't quite sure when I was knitting on these if I'd have enough of that mini for cuff, heel, and toes, so I just kind of went with heel and toes just to be on the safe side. And I have enough left over. I totally could have done the cuff too, but that's fine. I actually kind of like that look as it is. So you can see I've got 2 socks, which is exciting. I finished these on Boxing Day, so the day after Christmas, even though it's not really a thing here. Jordan was lucky enough to have that day off work as well, so we kind of hung out and I got some good knitting done. I really love how these turned out. The way the color pooled in such a way to give kind of a candy stripe sort of effect. And I used a modified version of Molly from A Homespun House's Mrs. Weasley's Family Sock pattern. Basically, the modified part is I did the idea of the contrasting cuff and toe, heel and toe like she suggests, and then the stitch pattern itself. Well, I'll switch sides so it's closer to the camera. The stitch pattern is from that, but I worked it at a different gauge, my preferred sock gauge, rather than the one that is called for in the pattern. You guys know me, I'm all about modifying sock patterns to suit preferences, right? If you're comfortable enough knitting socks, you know what you like, stick to what you like if you can, right? So I did end up going with a wedge toe instead of my preferred sideways toe. I was just kind of in the mood for it, and I don't know, I like them both. The sideways toe I like a little bit just because it's something different. Not many other people do. I mean, it fits my toe well. It's not as pointy as a wedge toe is, so if you want a more rounded toe, that one actually works pretty well. But other than that, I mean, the wedge toe fits me just fine. The heel though is definitely, I do have a strong preference for this one. This is, you can tell, an afterthought heel, and if you can tell from the way it's sitting on the sock blockers here, it's knit so that there's a little bit more fabric there. So instead of, like, some afterthought heels will have you doing basically a wedge toe right from the start, or maybe 2 or 3 rounds worked straight using all of the stitches before starting decreases. I think I've got 12 rounds of knitting before the decreases, right? And then the decreases are every single round before kitchening the heel. It's the same heel that I use in my French vanilla sock pattern, just free on Ravelry. So if you aren't quite understanding how I'm describing it, which is legit, sometimes I'm not clear, but you want to know more or you're interested in it, you can find it there. So really love how these turned out. Haven't worn them yet, but I will be bringing them up to my parents' house so that I can wear them for our family Christmas. Speaking of Steiner family Christmas, I think everything, the next 4 things I'm going to show you are all gift knits that are either finally done, thank goodness, or close to being done and hopefully will be done by the time I need them to be. Oh, that's really nice. Sorry, that was my first sip of the tea I showed you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one gift knit now that's finished, and then I'm going to splice in, like kind of cut in a discussion of another finished hat that's already been gifted out, just so if you guys are aware of what's happening there. The one I can show you now, this is for my dad. I'll show you the other side before I talk about that tag. So this is the Tied Knots hat, which is a free hat pattern on Ravelry. And it is just a really gorgeous, surprisingly simple cable knit hat pattern. It is a DK weight hat, so it is nice and cozy. And I knit this out of my own, one of my DK bases, out of my Bretagne base, which is 100% non-superwash merino, right? So it is gorgeously soft, really warm and cozy, and I think my dad is gonna love it. It is nice and long. I didn't add any sort of extra length here. Dad's not big for extra things or rolling it up or anything like that, so this should fit him just perfectly. One thing I've done with all of my gift knits, or will be doing for the ones that aren't quite finished, is adding little care tags to them. I found these on Etsy, and I will put information, like links to the shop and all that kind of stuff, of where you guys can find more. There are tons of different designs in the Etsy shop. I liked these because they were vaguely Christmassy, but also not, in case I want to use them other times of the year. On the front, it's just this really nice design. Let the recipient know that it's handmade, and then on the back, it is all the different possible care instructions. So I've just gone ahead and X'd the relevant things. Right. I did have to put a hole through one of the care instructions here, but it is for dry clean only, and considering you should not dry clean hand knits, I figure that's okay. Especially considering I've indicated do not dry clean. Yep, so all the relevant things, like it should be hand washed, it should be laid flat to dry, don't wring it out, don't bleach it, don't iron it, none of these things. Because I don't know about you, but I know if I were to receive a hand knit or handmade item, I would want to know how to care for it properly, so I didn't end up destroying it. I do put some thought into the yarn given to different people, just kind of based on their potential knowledge, maybe, or desired effort, right? Like, for example, for my mom, I'm not gonna gift her a pair of hand knit socks, in part, you know, especially out of anything like super nice or anything like that. Never give her anything with like a non-super washable. Not that you find a ton of non-super wash sock yarn, but regardless. But basically because I know that mom doesn't want anything that she's going to have to hand wash. If she can't throw it in with the normal wash or take it to a dry cleaner, it's not in her wheelhouse, right? Fingerless mitts are one thing, because you don't really tend to have to wash those very often. But socks, I think, are a different thing. So, I mean, you gotta gauge your gift accordingly. Like, I would never give my mom a hand knit sweater. Too much pressure for her, she wouldn't want it. But also, I'd be setting her up for failure. So, there is that. But anyway, really nice little tags I found on Etsy. I think it's a, what was it? It was a printable PDF, and there were 12 tags per sheet of paper, and it was $4, and you can print it off obviously as many times as you want. So really great deal. I think I'm going to be using that a lot in the future. Well, whenever I do hand knit gifts anyway. But yeah, I just kind of took a different piece of yarn, some scrap yarn I had laying around, just kind of ran it under one stitch and knotted it. So I used a different color yarn too, so it's clear that this can just be snipped and removed, which I thought was rather clever. We'll see. I think a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a while ago, I showed you 2 hats that I knit earlier on this fall. They're Christmas knits for my brothers. And then this is also the last hat that I've knit recently, which is another Christmas present. I added a little pom-pom to this one. Although I may change out the color depending on the recipient's preference. But yeah, so this is a Twiggy hat. It's the name of the pattern. It is free on Ravelry. Right, the designer is YYC Knits. It's got a twisted stitch motif on it, and I knit this again out of francofille knits yarn. This is my chaussette base, my sock weight base, and the colorway here is lichen, right, which is this really gorgeously speckled neutral. I love this base. I actually dyed up a ton more of it after knitting up this hat. And yeah, just another really cute, slouchy, quick knit, and just trying on all these gifts. It's not a big deal. I have a big head. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before, but I have a really big head. And the recipient has a smaller head than I do. So it's gonna be a little slouchier on her than it is on me. But I really love it. I think it's super cute. Again, it doesn't even take up a full skein of yarn. Gotta love that from a gift knit. If you are a selfish knitter like myself. Right, I think I've got about just a hair over half the skein left. So I can get 2 hats out of this. Not a bad deal. Just really great. The pattern as written calls for you to create these little motifs doing cables without a cable needle. So you just kind of like take a stitch off the needle, let it hang out for a second, and then pick it up. Just A, can be slightly nerve-wracking, especially if you're not used to having to do that. And B, is also just kind of time intensive. So yeah, halfway through the project, halfway through the hat, I started doing my standard left and right twisted stitches that I use a lot in my my sock patterns. And I mean, you can't even tell where I switched over, right? It gives the exact same effect and is a lot quicker. Just a little pro tip, it's a free pattern again. If you create these using left and right twist instead of the cable without a needle process described in the pattern, it may be a slightly more enjoyable and faster and easier knit, you know, or maybe this is how you're used to doing it and you enjoy it, and in which case, you know, awesome, go for it. It does have a 2x2 rib, but on the outside you knit through the back loop, which I'd never done before. Let me rephrase that. I've done I've done both a 2x2 rib, obviously, and, you know, a twisted rib, but I've never combined those, right? And I'm not 100% convinced by it. If I'm being totally honest, I would probably do a 1x1 twisted rib, but that's just personal preference. No real strong reason why, necessarily. I think I just like the look of one or the other better than this combined version. I added a cute little pom-pom. I actually asked on Instagram for people to help me pick which one to do. So I knew after I finished knitting it that it needed a pom-pom. I think it just kind of completes the hat. I think it's really cute. But I didn't actually have any furry pom-poms, and I didn't want to make a yarn pom-pom, right? Like a standard yarn one. So I jumped on Amazon because we're getting close to Christmas and I wanted to make sure that whatever I ordered arrived with plenty of time. And I found a giant assortment of furry pom-poms for next to nothing. It's obviously coming from China. There's Chinese on the little sticker there. They are faux fur. There were listings for real fur. I don't personally feel comfortable with that, especially not for a pom-pom, right? There's no real argument that it's keeping you warm if it's a pom-pom. But anyway, but yeah, I'm actually really pleased with the selection. So I was debating, excuse the crinkling, which one of these 3 pom-poms to use with this hat. And, well, all 3 definitely got votes, and I think, you know, any of the 3 of them could be really cute with the hat. The brown was definitely the winner on Instagram, and I think it's definitely the right call. However, somebody on Instagram brought up a really good point. It depends a little bit on the recipient's like winter coat. So I may be switching it out for this black and gray one, depending on what the recipient prefers. We will be making some decisions on Christmas morning. Yeah, and luckily, I mean, it's easy enough to swap them out. I didn't really, it's secured tightly, but not in a way that I can't undo. And the nice thing about these little pom-poms is they've got a little elastic loop in them that you can kind of run string through to just attach them real quick, or yarn. Yeah, and I want to say something like maybe $8 for 12 of them. Like they were really awesomely affordable. Right. So I think there will be lots more pom-poms added to my hats in the future. Time for whips. I've got a couple hose and a hat that is most of the way towards being done. These are not my only whips I'm working on right now. I am also working on my January sock club socks, but those are a secret for the time being. But signups are open if you are interested. Speaking of socks, let's go with those first. So in addition to that cable knit hat, I'm also gifting my dad a pair of socks. So as I was saying before about my mom and her laundering preferences, let's say, I was very particular about the yarn that I selected for dad's socks. As much as I would love to give him some socks out of my own hand-dyed yarn, I wanted to make sure that whatever I was giving him in the sock department could definitely stand up to being put through the washer and dryer without, you know, a catastrophe. And while I have accidentally run my current sock base through the washing machine, I have been lucky enough to catch those little mistakes before they end up in the dryer. So I'm not exactly sure how well they'd stand up to it, and I'm not entirely sure I want to sacrifice any of my socks to that experiment. Maybe one of these days I'll knit up in like a baby size sock or something and do that, but I haven't done that yet, so I'm not gifting it without knowing expressly how it can be taken care of. With that all in mind, I decided to do some stash diving and found a couple balls of Patton's Croy for socks for dad. And I gotta say one thing, like totally pro Patton's Croy, it stands up beautifully to being thrown in the washer and dryer. If anything, it even gets better the more times it goes through the washer dryer, right? So dad's feet are a little bit longer than mine. He wears a men's size 10.5. I wear a women's 9. So I added an extra inch or so to the foot. I also did a 2x2 ribbing for the cuff that goes the entire way. And the ribbing extends down onto the foot almost all the way. I stopped at the toe decreases. I also did a standard heel flap. Yeah, I've got one done. I really like that. I think dad's gonna like it too. And I'm almost done with the gusset decreases on sock number 2. Now they are gonna be sisters, not twins. All right, you can tell it's one full stripe off, but that's it. So I think they'll look like a really nice coherent pair. Yeah, they can, like I said, just kind of get thrown in the wash without any real worry. So fingers crossed they hold up over time, because I think my dad will really appreciate a pair of hand knit socks. He's kind of like, he's where I get my my cold feet from. So that is dad's last half of his present. What to show you next? So I think last time I showed you guys the epic brioche scarf that I knit for my mom. It took me like a year. She was supposed to get it last Christmas, and then for Mother's Day, and then for her birthday, and she's finally getting it now. It's been so long that I've been working on this scarf that she's completely forgotten that it's for her. Even though I ran it past her several times. We've talked about it several times. Oh, this one just kind of kept getting put on the back burner, and maybe that makes me a bad daughter, but she's finally getting it, and that is 100% what matters. Yes, so I took forever knitting that scarf for Mom. Actually, she was here the week before Christmas to kind of help me get the house ready because she's an angel, and I actually had her try the scarf on and all that to make sure it was long enough, and she made a comment. She's like, oh, well, you know, your sister-in-law is absolutely gonna love this. So she legitimately has forgotten that it is for her. She'll be happily surprised, I believe, because she was a little bit annoyed. I think she wanted it for herself. But anyway, in addition to that scarf, I'm also knitting her a brioche hat, right, which right now is just a brioche tube to go with it. It doesn't match exactly. It's a lot more subdued. Mom's not real big into matchy-matchy kind of things, so I wanted something that is similar but not identical. And this is the Vanilla Fog Hat by Andrea, right, which is honestly the most simple, straightforward, effective brioche sort of pattern. It's awesome. And the thing that's unique about it, because it is brioche, it's worked up like a one-color brioche, but it's not, right? You actually use 2 strands of fingering weight yarn held together, so it basically creates a DK weight hat, and then just knit around like it's regular one-color brioche. I've got my little Sucra Miniatures progress keeper on there. It's a little peppermint tea. You can see that on there. It's got a little peppermint. It's got a little sugar cube. It's very cute. I gotta say, this is probably one of my favorite progress keepers just because it's adorable. But yeah, that just shows me which side is the right side of the hat, which, you know, you can figure out pretty easily just by reading the knitting, but if you can add a little progress keeper on it, why not? So all of this is francofille yarn. I'm using my leftover lichen from Sarah's hat. And then the green here on the bottom was leftovers from my December sock club. Right, this is my sapin colorway, or I guess pine tree, right, pine. And then this, right, the blue from up here, is actually one of the colorways from my Hanukkah mini skein set. And this is Pay or Peace. Really sweet variegated blue-gray that is spiraling up really nicely. So yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna keep knitting on this for a couple extra rows. Mom likes her hats real big and cozy and chunky, and she's gonna want to be able to fold up the brim, so I'm just gonna keep going and going and going on this. I think I'm gonna bring a pom-pom, kind of like what I put on Sarah's hat. I've got a couple different colors to pick from. I'm gonna bring a couple options up with me for Christmas so that Mom can decide whether or not she wants a pom-pom and what color she wants. Mom is very particular when it comes to these things, so she's gonna want some options. Oh, one thing about pom-poms, right? I mentioned, I think, in that previous little clip about Sarah's hat that I was gonna give her the option to either remove the pom-pom or put a different color on. She ended up liking it as is, so that is the pom-pom. Yeah, that pom-pom wins the winner. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you may be a little curious about the fact that this is getting gifted, as initially I was doing this as some selfish knitting. Well, Mom saw me working on it and kind of oohed and awed over it, so Mom will also be receiving this. And that's okay, I've got the pattern now. It's a really super straightforward pattern if you can knit brioche, so I'll just make myself a different one and it'll be fine. Although I have to say, for myself, I will need to cast on a couple more stitches or do a stretchier cast on. I gotta figure that out. Because it uses the sort of twisted German or like old Norwegian, same thing, cast on, which is supposed to be like an even stretchier version of a long-tailed cast on, but I can just barely get this over my head. Granted, I've got a really big head. I know that. It's just kind of a fact of life. My head is huge. Or maybe I'll have to cast on, I think the pattern calls for like a size 6. Maybe I'll have to cast on a size 8 and then knit for real on a size 6. But as it stands, right, because you can tell from here, the whole hat itself has a ton of stretch to it. I mean, thank you brioche, that's what it does, but that cast on is kind of limited. If I make it again for myself, which I probably will because it's an awesome pattern, I will be making some modifications to that cast on edge. Really like this pattern, highly, highly, highly recommend. Honestly, I think it'd be a really, really good first brioche project too, because it is just straight up brioche ribbing. Like, it's really nothing crazy. The only remotely complicated part is that you're using 2 strands of yarn. Vanilla Fog, highly recommend. The last bit of gift knitting to show you is actually a project I have been putting off for years. I am not a glove knitter. I think I have successfully knit 1 glove. Oh, did you hear that? That was Lucy. Miss Lucy wants some attention. Yeah, I think in the 15 or so years that I've been knitting, I have knit literally 1 glove. I gave up after 1 glove. Mittens, fine. Fingerless mitts, totally doable. Gloves, for some reason, just the individual finger thing just was giving me palpitations. It was not working. Granted, my intro to glove knitting was a Jared Flood pattern from Interweave Knits, probably in like 08 or 09. So really gorgeous but complicated cables running up all of the fingers. Like, it was, I am not always smart with my first attempts at projects. I like to pick really complicated patterns and then I'm surprised when I get frustrated. She's just feeling very lovey right now. So my youngest brother has been asking me for convertible fingerless mitts for a long time. You know, he lives up in Chicago. It gets super freaking cold. And so fingerless mitts aren't gonna cut it for him through the winter. And he doesn't want gloves because he wants to be able to use his phone, and mittens just are not a thing. You know, they're even more limiting than gloves are. So I showed him a couple different options, or kind of talked to him about what some of the different options were out there, and he wanted convertible fingerless gloves. Not just mitts, right? He wanted it like the individual finger portal things. I don't even know what they're called. So basically what he wanted was podster gloves. Wow. He asked for this after my little glove knitting fiasco. So the idea of figuring out how to not only do the fingers part, but also attach the little flip over cover was just crazy intimidating to me. So I put that gift off for about 2 years. And then finally I gave in this year. If I'm gonna knit him something, it needs to be something he's actually going to use. So I gave in. And I did it. I am halfway through. I've definitely got some modifications to make. Got 1 podster glove. I did choose the whole thumb modification. I figure if he's messing around on his phone, he can use his fingers. That is really the goal. I'm impressed with this pattern. Again, podster gloves. I think it's free on Ravelry. There's like a million projects already done on this. Right, you can see I had to figure out how to pick up those stitches across the back a little bit better. So you can see it's got that weird little diagonal line where it attaches, but whatever, not that huge of a deal. It actually does a really effective job of covering up the fingers. The top of the finger part, right, is up here. So you've got a good inch of overlap. So no worries about accidental finger exposure. But yeah, I gotta say, I get why this pattern is such a hit. This is my show set base. The colorway is definitely a one of a kind. It started out as my first attempt at a December sock club colorway. Absolutely hated the way it turned out. It's not what I wanted at all, so I overdyed it. Overdyed it with navy, and see that's why there are like red speckles in there, because it was originally going to be I think like a red and teal speckled colorway. It was not cute, friends. It was a hot mess. So yeah, it got overdyed and now it actually is salvageable. Overdyeing covers many sins. I am well into glove number 2. I have to say the other thing I was really surprised about with this pattern was I was amazed how quickly the fingers actually did knit up and how quickly the little flip over part knit up too. Honestly, I think the cuff, because it is about 3.5 inches of 1x1 twisted rib, that is the longest part. And I didn't want to skimp on the cuff, right? Because again, it's winter in Chicago. It gets cold and I want to make sure he's got enough of a cuff here so that, you know, there's not like some gap between his coat and his wrist in the beginning of the glove. Hopefully it should be good. So Colin gets some fingerless gloves out of some Misfit yarn. Luckily I like the colorway. If it was really bad, if I didn't like the colorway, I wouldn't use it at all. I wouldn't just kind of gift it out. I don't know, I actually really like the way the colorway turned out. These should fit. Fingers crossed. they don't fit him, they fit me. They're a little bit big on me in terms of length, so they should fit Colin just fine. So yeah, so that is all of my gift knitting. The things I've showed you, like the sock, the gloves, and that hat for Mom, they're all gonna get the same little care tags that I showed you on Dad's hat. Other than that, like I said earlier, I have been doing a little bit of selfish knitting for myself. I am working on my January sock club socks, although that's only kind of halfway selfish knitting. They are gonna end up being for me, but it's also work, right? Like I've got to design the pattern for the sock club. I did mention that I got a couple knitting related books for Christmas from Jordan and his side of the family. So you guys know I've been getting into yoga kind of over the course of 2017. I really got back into a more regular practice, and the first book is about the mindfulness in knitting, and it's awesome. It's really quite fabulous. I mean, just show you the table of contents on this. It's really kind of perfect and exactly what I need right now. All about meditative knitting, right? Like how to be mindful as you knit, but also, yeah, how knitting can be a meditative practice. So I'm really excited about this. Haven't started reading it yet. Been a little busy, but I'm really looking forward to diving into this one. So there you go. You can get this one on Amazon if that is something that interests you. Rachael Matthews is the writer. That was from my in-laws, and then they also got me Silk Road socks by Hunter Hammersen, who I follow on Instagram. His Instagram, oh my god, talk about knitting inspiration. And it's just the most gorgeous and intricate sock patterns, right? Like there are, I don't think there's a single pattern in this book that I don't want to knit. Yeah, they're all just, I want to like just find a way to just show you the pattern, like the picture without any of the details. Right, aren't these gorgeous? I've been having a hard time deciding which one of these to cast on first. Need to go through my stash and find like the right tonal yarn. Oh, it may be these. I'm in love. Right, how gorgeous are these? You know me, I've been getting really into like intricate sock patterns. I will say this month's sock club pattern, super straightforward. I really wanted this month's sock club pattern to be super intricate too. And then I realized like the colorway was just competing too much with the pattern. So it's way more straightforward. It's still really fun. Like I kind of am annoyed that I'm not working on it right now because I really want to keep knitting on it. But it originally was a lot of like twisted stitches, moving around and all that kind of stuff. Cabling without actual cable needles, like twisted, like twisted rib individual stitches that were twist, like knit one through the back loop, twisted, but then also twisting over each other, twisted. I think it was getting a little intense. It was beautiful. I have to keep this design in mind for another month when I do a simpler colorway. But yes, it is a variegated colorway, so it's getting a little too much. If you're gonna knit complicated socks, you need to be able to see the pattern, right? Which is why, let's see on here, right? Some beautiful colorways here, but they're all tonal, right? Because they're complicated. Then Jordan got me two knitting related books because he thought the titles were hilarious to him as a non-knitter. So the first one is Yarnitecture. So my New Year's resolution, one of them this year, was to get better at spinning. Unfortunately, I dropped the ball on that a little bit. I got a couple craftsy classes, but I don't know. I got busy, I got distracted, I got frustrated, and it didn't really work out. So I'm hoping Yarnitecture will help me build the yarn that I want. Right. So yeah, it's a book about spinning, if you aren't familiar with it, but specifically with a mind for knitting, right? So spinning yarn to be knit with. Yeah, it also includes a bunch of knitting patterns and stuff like that with some pretty epic designers. So I'm really excited to dive into this one too, because I have a lot to learn about spinning. I've got, like I said, a couple craftsy classes that I have watched, I'm gonna rewatch. But I think between those and this, hopefully, I can finally get decent at spinning. And then the other one, this one just had Jordan tickled, is Alternknit. Stranded colorwork, Stitch Dictionary. I was mostly amused because the woman on the back, right, the author, the designer, is wearing a leather coat, and he just thought that was hilarious for some reason. I guess he thinks that most knitters are very boring like me. Who knows? But yeah, he just thought that was awesome. He also found the idea of like alternative, like knitting is just kind of anathema to him. But there's some really cool stuff in here. I'm really excited about this one. Like there's some crazy stuff in here that I thought was awesome. Like Fair Isle zombies. Who doesn't want to know how to knit Fair Isle zombies? So good. I've been wanting to do more color work, so this is perfect. I'm really excited to dive into this. Yeah, alternate. So yeah, I got those 4 books for Christmas. Other than that, I'm going to show you guys the shop update part from the last episode I recorded, which will kind of go over generally the different yarns I've got dyed up, some examples of the colorways. And then one thing I do want to add in is that from today, which is the 28th of December, until January 1st, I'm running a sale in my shop. If you buy 3 skeins of yarn, you get 25% off your order. So figure, treat yourself for the new year. Get yourself some fun colors. Stock up on sock yarn, shawl yarn, or, you know, 3 skeins of yarn, 4 skeins of yarn. That's a sweater's quantity, right? See if there's anything that you might want. There are a couple giant piles of yarn sitting on that buffet behind me. There's actually 2 more large Tupperware totes of yarn at my feet. So I've got a lot of yarn in the store. I'm not gonna go through all of it right now. I'm gonna go through some new stuff. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of stock in the Etsy store right now. Both like there's fall colorways in there. There's a lot of tonals that are actually all dyed up already that are in like sweaters quantities, things like that. So there is a ton of stuff out there that is ready to ship. I'm going to be messing with my Etsy store a little bit. I think I'm only gonna have ready to ship stuff listed. I think that's just gonna be easier rather than doing the dyed to orders as on top of the ready to ship, which is worked out well too for you guys, because when it's ready to ship, like my shipping is, I think it's set up as 2 to 3 business days. So yarn gets to you quickly. The only exception I think to that is the sock clubs. Those I think I'm gonna keep doing as dyed to order. So I've been going a little nuts with this Provence base, this Merino silk base. I dyed up a couple skeins of, this is Sénonc, which was one of my spring colorways. It just kind of works beautifully on this base. Really nice, gorgeously pale lavender color with speckles of deep, almost like black gray, a really deep dark gray, and then this really beautiful green, and it breaks and you get little speckles of blue in there too. This is just, it's gorgeous. It works really well with Orage, that really gorgeous charcoal gray. That honestly would be a really stunning brioche project, or 2-color shawl, like standard 2-color shawl. Right, the speckles on this base are really delightfully fine. Sorry, I'm like not showing the actual camera. Right, really nice and fine speckles, which will just add just really nice dimension to whatever you're knitting, right? Add a little depth in there. Give it a little bit of extra interest without taking away from the overall stitch patterning or project, which is really nice. I did also bring back another spring colorway on the same base. Right, this is Calanque, which again is another pastel with speckles colorway. Also gray and green, different gray, different green. It works better on this base. You get more yellow breakage with the green speckles on this one. It's a little bit warmer of a green, a little less blue. Yeah, love this. And then same idea, right? Pairs really nicely with that dark gray. I think what else could pair nicely. That's kind of an interesting combo. Kind of like that actually. It's kind of cool. This is Nounours, or teddy bear. Nice tonal brown. I mean, the speckles are nice and light enough that they're gonna give you a really nice added depth, but they're not going to be distracting. So I've got a couple skeins of that dyed up as well. These two do kind of go together really nicely too. That makes me happy. So I've got that. En flambeau, Jeannette Isabelle, right? Or Bring a Torch, Jeannette Isabelle. One of my favorite Christmas carols. Right? Really gorgeous pale gray base with these great, really warm purple and gold speckles. Again, another 3 or 4 of these skeins dyed up. And again, just pairs beautifully with that charcoal. So good. And then the last new one to show you guys is I've got a good quantity of lichen dyed up on this. It's super subtle, but I think it would be a really gorgeous sweater. Right? You can't... The way the skeins got twisted up, the speckles kind of got shifted to the middle. It kind of happens sometimes. Right? But you've got the really gorgeously deep woodsy speckles on a really nice neutral base. And then there's just the subtle hint of this taupe running through as well, right, which gives you, again, when it knits up, it gives you that sort of really warm neutral with a little bit of extra depth to it, right? Just a little bit of interest without being overwhelming. It's really kind of gorgeous. I love it. Lichen is gorgeous on its own for sure, but again, pairs really nicely with that really warm brown and with the charcoal gray. Right. I may need to steal that for myself. So I've been, like I said, I've been busy on Provence this last week. There's so much good stuff on Chaussette. It's so good. It's gorgeous. I love that base. If I had to pick one base to knit everything for the rest of my life in, it would be that Chaussette base, right? The wool, it's a really nice, super fine superwash merino, so it's really, really soft. It's got just enough nylon for strength, so it's great for socks. It holds up amazingly well. Yeah, it's just a really great, very versatile, all-around sort of base. Don't get me wrong, this is a dream to work with. If you want something just a little bit of luxury to it, right? This with the 25, it's the same merino as the other one, the same wool, but it's 25% silk. So it gives it that little extra shine to it. I mean, it's a dream, don't get me wrong. I've also dyed up a ton of DK weight yarn. There's gonna be a ton of DK weight in the shop, a couple sweaters quantities on both bases, both of my DK weight bases. I've got one that is a superwash wool nylon blend and one that is that I showed you already, that's non-superwash. I'm trying to think, the non-superwash is mostly tonals. There's, I think, a handful of non-tonal colorways. I think I've got a couple speckled colorways. I mean, speckles are interesting on non-superwash, right? They're not crisp, they blend out a little bit, which is a really cool effect. Don't get me wrong. It's just not always what I'm looking for as a dyer. And then there's a variegated colorway as well. Tranquille on there. And then there's still a good amount of MCN left in the shop. I think I've got a sweaters quantity in at least one colorway of MCN up there, and I've got some more MCN on the way. I'm super excited to finally have that back in stock. It has shipped, so it should be arriving in time for my next shop update, which I think is going to be in the new year. Thank you for spending some time with me, and I will see you guys again soon. Bon tricot, happy knitting. Bye.